Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemet. Joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Sheikh of the Day School of Long Island, and Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky of Anshe Chesed in New York City. Great to see you. We are studying together this week Parashat Beha'alokha. Before we begin, just a big shout out to all of our viewers, all of our listeners. You know who you are. Some of them we talk to, and we are so grateful and thankful to you for spending this time with us, even though, as one individual said to me, it's like, do you remember the car show Frickin' Frack on NPR? He says, sometimes your Parsha Talk sounds like that. And I go like, yeah.
I love my brother. My brother doesn't know anything about carburetors.
Good. We
Hats
have a good
off.
banter. Thank you, Phil Susswine. Okay, Parshat Beha'alokha is this parsha. We have lots of material in this parsha, lots of difficult stuff later on in the parsha. But we start out here. I want to just take the cue and focus in on
You want
this.
to toot your horn?
No, before we get to the tooting of horns, I want to talk about. We haven't talked about Pesach in a long time, and how interesting is it that several weeks after Pesach, after Shavuot, we get Pesach, a rule about Pesach, and so this is in chapter 9 of the Midbar, where we are talking about an individual who misses the opportunity to do the first Pesach. Okay, so the people do they're in the second year. They sacrifice, they make Pesach, and what does it say? They said there were a few people that came up to Aaron or Moses, right? Verse 5. They made Pesach. Verse 6. Vayhi anashim asher yutmim lenefesh adam. There were people who became impure because of the contact with the dead. Lo yachlu lasot Pesach. They weren't able to make the Pesach. They weren't able to participate in the sacrifice on the day. Vayikrevu lifnei Moshe v'lifnei Aaron. They came before Moses and Aaron on that day. Vayomru anashim ha'imai elav, and they say to him, "Anachnu tmeim lenefesh. We are impure. Lama nigara levilti ikriv et korban Adonai b'moado. Why can't we're not able to sacrifice this offering at the time?" And they appeal to God to render a decision on this question. And we get a very interesting institution here, which is called Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach. God says to Moses, speak to the children of Israel. If a person is in that condition, im tameh lanefesh, if a person is impure, or finds himself a long way, this person can still make Pesach b'chodesh hasheni, in the second month, yom ben arbaim, etc., etc., etc. So you get a do-over. Okay, this may be the best example of you have moed bet, you have your makeup opportunity. You missed the Pesach on the first time, so you make it out. Have your Pesach on the second in the second month, the 14th day of the second month. You would basically do it identically to the way it would have been done before, without the designation of the lamb on the 10th day. But you still slaughter it. You roast it. You eat it with matzah and maror. So I turn to you and ask you, well, what do you make of this? How do we understand this? How do you understand this? I guess, from any perspective. I'm going to start with you, Barry. Go ahead.
So it's a curious ritual, I think, on a number of different levels. So the initiation of the ritual comes from a question from people who have experienced corpse impurity. But the answer includes people who are too far from the temple or the tabernacle, which is interesting because the answer gives us more than the question asked for, which in legal circles, generally we do not do. So I find that interesting. The other thing I find interesting is that our Pesach in Nisan is situated with the festival of Matzot, Chag HaMatzot, which requires the removal of chametz from the house. And here there is no removal of chametz from the house. You're making the Pesach sacrifice amidst chametz, which is I find also fascinating because I think most of us identify Pesach with this restriction on eating chametz, and the Pesach Sheni, what you called the makeup, you don't have to do any of that stuff. So the ritual itself speaks on many different levels. And the third thing I would just add is that at the end of the law, it says that someone who actually could make it the first month and didn't, they'll suffer the penalty of I think it's karet here, which is so that people who genuinely have a need to make up the Pesach sacrifice have the opportunity, but people who found it more convenient to not do it the first month bear the penalty for their action.
That's fascinating. I don't know, Jeremy, what do you make out of this?
I think that at the core of this is, and the derech rechoka thing is very interesting. The distant, and the rabbis actually minimize very much the circumstances. They very much expand the circumstances under which somebody can consider themselves derech rechoka, far away, unable to have reached Jerusalem for the Passover. That's a kind of an almost unusual set of leniencies about that. But what this embodies is the reality that there are lots of mitzvot, and Passover is very, 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 very central. To participate in the covenantal meal of Pesach is a major, major Jewish event. If you do it, you are part of the people. If you just choose to blow it off, the penalty is karet, a kind of excision from the people of Israel. But there are lots of mitzvot, and some of them involve choosing to become tameh. So there's a Gemara in Tractate Sukkah, which states that who are the people? They were carrying Joseph's coffin. Remember, the Israelites carried up not only the box that had the Ten Commandments, it also carried up the box of Joseph's coffin. They carried back this ancestral history in the presence of this coffin, and that's a major mitzvah, and that's a great thing. Or another version is that they were helping a mate mitzvah. They were burying an abandoned corpse. Major mitzvah. So sometimes there's going to be some conflicts. If you do this great mitzvah of carrying Joseph's bones, if you do this great mitzvah of being osek b'meit mitzvah, about tending to an abandoned corpse, there's going to be some negative consequences. And you don't want to encourage people to say, like kind of a modern attitude, perhaps, I cannot become impure. I have to celebrate Pesach. Actually, here's what we want you to do. We want you to get your hands dirty, so to speak. And we're going to still make it possible for you to have full membership and not punish you by alienating you from the covenantal ceremony.
What strikes me is that it seems that these individuals who need that experience, and they need to do it on a specific day. So the 14th of the month, which is the new moon, of course it's given them 30 days since the first one, which may or may not be significant. Probably is significant. The sense I get is that this moment is so necessary for their own sustenance that they won't feel right without it, by having missed opportunity. And because even though the Talmud gives all these wonderful reasons, life happened to all of them, and they still want to feel what they're missing. And they may be missing a sense of covenantal community. They may be missing a sense of belonging, or they may be missing simply a good meal. I don't know, Barry.
I want to suggest something a little bit different, that the Pesach sacrifice is the entrance ticket into the people. And it's something that you're required to do every year because you have to commit to the people every single year. And one way of looking at Pesach Sheni, it's kind of like you you miss counting Omer at night, so you're allowed to count without a bracha the following day and then resume counting with a bracha the next night. Similarly, this year you may have had to avail yourself of Pesach Sheni, and I would think that people would make more of an effort to make sure they got to the Pesach Rishon the following year. And, I think sometimes we don't emphasize the peoplehood qualities of some of these rituals and how important they are to create and sustain and nurture our Jewish identity.
Well,
So I think this is
good.
great. This is a great point. I have found that people sometimes want to make a binyan of a paradigm out of Pesach Sheni and say, see, in this religion you get second chances. Well, you don't get second chances for everything. There's also a phrase, a rabbinic phrase, avar zmano batel korbano. If you miss the time, you can't offer the sacrifice later, which does not apply to Pesach Sheni, right? If if you have to, you're supposed to offer such and such and such on this holiday, and you didn't do it, avar zmano batel korbano. You miss the time, but I find that my congregants, generally speaking, resonate with this idea of we give people second chances, and I do think that that is a very important piece of the religious toolkit. Um, I've had conversations with people about interpersonal relationships and people they do or they don't want to give someone in their life a second chance. And I said, well, if we believe in a religion of tshuva, which we do, we believe a religion in which repentance is a possibility, deep down we're in favor of second chances, but it isn't true that every mistake you make um, can be recompensed with a second chance. And it isn't true that we don't demand high standards of people. And so Pesach Sheni, I think, to me, it's interesting. Maybe we can come up with another example, but a biblical statement that all the reasons that Barry just said, this is your ticket to the community, to your national identity as part of Am Yisrael. It's karet if you don't do it. And so we have to do everything possible to see to it that people can remain, that individuals can remain part of the collective. Because if they're banished from the collective, and in the state of Israel today, in the United States today, we got a lot of that dynamic of wanting to banish people from the shared collective, and I think that's pretty bad. And I think we got to the image we get from Pesach Sheni is the reminder that individuals can have a good, meaningful, rich life, but it demands being part of the collective.
It's so interesting. I'm just remembering as you're speaking, when COVID broke out, which was in February, March of 2020 for us, we all went into our various lockdowns. So it was just after Purim. Purim was the last time we were together, and then as normally what happens in the Jewish life is once Purim is over, you really do a hard turn to Pesach, and people were starting to think about, well, what are we going to do at Pesach now that we're on lockdown, now that we are really sequestered in our homes? What is Pesach going to look like? And can you even conceive of Pesach by yourself? So of course, the Zoom world, chimed in, and there were lots of, provisions for that. But someone said, I recall the conversation, well, this is a temporary situation. We'll be able to deploy the Pesach Sheni rule, and we'll just suspend Pesach now and observe it in a month. To which I responded, I don't think so. No, it's not going to work. We're going to have to figure out how to do. We work by halakha, not by the Bible, which is again, it's like I remember also I keep biblically kosher. I don't eat
I don't eat bats. No
I
bats,
keep
no
biblical
cormorants.
kosher. So that's great that you keep biblical kosher, right? Because the Bible doesn't talk about shechita and salting and everything. The Bible just talks about what you can and can't eat. So I don't eat those things, snakes, and I don't cook lambs in their, calves in their mother's milk. Okay, that's biblically kosher. Doesn't work that way. I don't keep biblical Pesach either. Um, but again, it's the notion that we are we can make something up ritually, I think is very powerful. And we've all done our sermonics on this little chapter, for all the things that you've said, and they all make sense, but there is a deep satisfaction in knowing that you've accomplished it, and that knowing when you can't do it, that you're able to make it up somehow. I can think of all sorts of different scenarios where people kind of miss a deadline or miss something in shul or miss, I don't want to, they want to, I missed your sermon. It's not like that anyway, but I want to, can you send it to me? Can you, and it's like, I said, I always respond, it's like, it's never going to come out the same way.
I know. I feel the same way about
It
that.
is better though when they say I missed your sermon rather than say I heard your sermon.
I heard your sermon.
I
You
skipped
got
it.
to me
Well,
subconsciously.
this is the thing is one of you guys said, maybe we said it before we started recording, life happens and exigent circumstances happen. So the thing about the Pesach Sheni option is that it really is exigent. It's you have engaged with uh, corpse impurity because that was a ethical demand at that moment, or you were far away and you couldn't make it, even pre the biblical derech rechoka, the biblical far away. You can't choose to blow it off,
Yeah.
and choosing to blow it off is a whole nother matter. Yeah.
All
So
right.
segue to the Chatzotz Road.
Yeah, let's say
Blowing it
let's
off.
chapter 10. So we have
Miles
this
Davis. This is the Miles Davis
Oh
chapter.
man, 100 years. I think it
Yeah,
was
I know. It's
even.
100 years of Miles Davis's birth.
Do you know?
Wow.
I went
And
to
and
Woodlawn.
and Sonny Rollins, great saxophonist, died this week at 95.
Yeah. Just a short aside. If anyone wants to do a very fun thing in New York as a tourist, and it's very cheap, it's a subway ride, go to Woodlawn Cemetery. Fascinating place. And you'll see a lot of very interesting graves, including the grave of Miles Davis. There's a whole area in that cemetery. They take you on a little tour, and there's like all the jazz legends are buried there, and Miles Davis is buried there 100 years. Well, that brings us to this is trumpets. Trumpets, chapter 10. You are to make shtei chatzotrot kesef, two silver trumpets of hammered metal, and they had a specific purpose. They had a purpose to be blown when the people needed to be roused for their journey. Utekatem tru'a v'nasu machanot, where you blow it and the camp will go. Utekatem tru'a shenit. If you blow a second time, they will stop. To gather the people, uvakila takal titka'u lotariu. You sound a certain kind of sound when you need an assembly, and this is evichitavo milchama. You sound these chatzotzrot, not called shofar here. These trumpets are sounded in times of war, and then it says uviyom simchatchem, uvamoadechem rashei chodshechem, on your days of rejoicing, your festivals, your new moons, you are to blow these trumpets over your sacrifices, over your peace offerings. Vayulachem lezikaron, they shall be for you a remembrance. Exactly what that means we'll talk about, before God. And so the idea is that there is something about these instruments, these two chatzotzrot, two silver trumpets. They are sounded in different kinds of sounding. And those sounds signal to the people different things. They either signal, let's get up, or let's come down. They signal war, they signal danger. It's the hammer of freedom. It's the hammer of warning. It's, I don't think the trumpets are
The bell
love
of freedom.
between lovers.
The hammer of justice.
Yeah, okay. So it's a sound, and I specifically was thinking about the sound over the sacrifices, but we have sound on different times. If anybody wants to see the companion video of this is the class that I taught this week on this whole notion. We have the blowing of the bugle at funerals, right? I'm sure, have you done a Navy funeral or a veteran funeral and they play
Father.
your father? Did they do the flag? Did they do the whole
Yeah,
thing?
they did.
Did they do
He's a
it?
veteran of 2 wars.
Did they do it with a real
Your,
trumpet
your
or?
dad was in both World War II and Korea?
Yeah. I don't remember if it was a recording or a trumpet.
So
It was,
I think what I've often seen is that they sort of fake the trumpet and play a recording.
which
But
is so amazing to me. It's like the guy holds the trumpet up. He's not holding it properly. He presses a button and it sounds.
it's Milli Vanilli.
Radayom Shemeshvam, Kol Chavim No Tzavim. So look, it's very moving though. It's very, very moving. The families are always very moved, and they do the flag ceremony, and then
It's very powerful.
they get the flag, and the person says, on behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, here's the flag. To which one widow said, I don't want it. The president. Which is so upsetting.
I by the way, just on this point that you have right now, this relates also to there's an idea that you're in shul and you just don't like the shaliach tzibor. You got a bad relationship with the person who's leading prayers. You really like there's a halachic preference that you have to love that person, they have to love you, and there's a real problem if you're davening and the shliach tzibur just makes you mad. And I'm reminded in that great wonderful World War II drama, Band of Brothers, which is a combination of sort of historical, real, and dramatized. Damian Lewis was the star of the show, and Ross, this is the guy who plays Ross. David Schwimmer just hates him, and he has to salute him, and he says, "You salute the rank, not the person." And so I think about that vis-a-vis the current president, but I also think about it vis-a-vis Israel, and I can't do that quite so well. I mean, like, there are people who just inspire in me real anger, and I don't know exactly what to do with that.
Well,
but anyway,
also,
that.
So when you salute the rank and not the person that you're saluting thinks that you're saluting the person and not the rank.
Okay, so sorry I mentioned that. So there's a soundtrack to it's the bugle sound for the funeral, has a history to it, but it's a very primitive sound, as is the shofar. The shofar is a primitive sound. I'm saying the bugle is a primitive sound because it's all, the modern trumpet you can play the whole scale on it, but a bugle you could only play the pitches. So ba 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 ba. Those are the pitches of the bugle. The valves give you the whole scale. What I'm saying is though that it's mournful, and invariably the people are very moved by it, moved sometimes to tears, moved sometimes to emotional place, in a similar way to the way that the shofar itself takes us to places emotionally that are very difficult to explain, very difficult to articulate.
Why do you think that is, though? Why is it so difficult to explain?
I'll tell you why. I have
my own idea after you.
I think there's a sound that's very deep inside us. I think it's deeply wired in us. We're definitely wired for music as creatures, as human beings. Music is so fundamental to what it means to be a human being, and I think these sounds are the earliest, most ancient forms of music. And they affect us, as does sound altogether. When we hear a bang, we are startled. When we hear a cry, we are alerted to it. When we hear laughter, we respond to it emotion. When we see and we hear people, weeping, we ourselves weep regardless of what we know. And so there is a deep physiological identification with sound. And so a mournful sound will trigger mourning in us, as does, I mean, I could put out the horn that you sound at the goal of the when a hockey player scores a goal, they now play this, and the crowd goes wild, and it's a signal to the crowd to go wild, and it's only within the last couple of decades. And what's that about? It's like to trigger emotion for you, and that's what I think it's about. Yeah.
So what strikes me, so Jacob Milgram in his commentary links the shofar and the chatzot with prayer, which I find quite intriguing because this kind of music is wordless. And so the it's a language, I think, but it's a wordless language, and that's where the power is. Because what makes it primitive is that language, spoken language, written language, is a higher development of human beings. And when we hear the sounds, we're responding as early human beings responded, not as we as modern people do. And what I was reminded while you were talking, Elliot, it reminds me a lot of Kol Nidre, because the power of Kol Nidre has nothing to do with the words that
Right.
most people don't even know what they say. It's that melody.
Yes.
And that melody is what makes the high holidays for so many people.
Definitely.
Without the words. The words are actually kind of an after effect, I think, for many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the wordlessness of the shofar as a prayer, because we're talking about a religion that on its holiest day of the year takes a 500-page book and reads it out loud. Like it's a little crazy, but I'm not speculating now on what it meant to ancient people, because all these things that we're saying now are quite correct. The way it works for me is that after all the words, or an accompaniment with all the words, this is the prayer of the things that I couldn't put into words.
Mm.
And that's the elemental part.
That's very nice.
So,
I
okay.
just want to add one more thing,
Yeah.
if I might. So, one of Cheskel Kaufman's contributions was the idea that first temple sacrifice was done silently. And so the wordless shofar and the chatzot wrote parallel the wordless sacrifice as well.
All right. So I want to go to a different place with this, which is the whole question of memory. It says, "Vayu lahem lezikaron." This shall be for you as memory. And I'll just pull up the verse again, chapter 10, verse 10. V'yom simchatchem, the day of your rejoicing, that utkatem b'chatzotzrot, you shall blow those trumpets over your sacrifices, all of them. Vayu lachem lezikaron, they shall be for you a memory to God. Okay, exactly how that works is not really clear. So let's get into it. Are you reminding God that you are there, or are you reminding yourself something?
That God is there.
That you're reminding yourself that God is there, or you're reminding yourself something else. So I wrote about this for the accidental Talmudists. This is, we all write for this from time to time, and I said that we are actually reminding ourselves of Sinai. Sinai is the only time that we really have shofar blasts, and that that the moment that you're blowing a chatzatra, a trumpet, making a sound, is to remind you of the primary sounding, which is the Mount Sinai sounding, which is a moment where God tries to break through. As successful or as unsuccessful as it was at Mount Sinai, we want to have a moment where we remember the moment of our founding. So at every single time we offer our sacrifice, we are remembering the moment that God broke through to us.
Very
And
beautiful. I like
yeah.
that.
So
I feel like I think that's a great drawing out of an implicit meaning. Maybe the anxiety, you said that God broke through. There is a kind of one can fear a kind of cosmic silence, and as those of us who are people of faith know that you sometimes have moments of faith, sometimes you have moments of absence, and to maybe employ the other translation, a remembrance of remind God that we're still here, the anxiety of human beings, mortal human beings, who look at a cold universe that doesn't notice that you're here, you sometimes blow the shofar and remember, I am still here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a mirror image, a reversal of the one that you brought out, but they share this thing in common that there is a great distance, or there can be a great distance, and sometimes you can feel a silence. And whether we remind ourselves of those moments when the distance is pierced, or we yell to the distance and say, "Don't forget that we're still here." It's
So
that's got
that's
to.
it's fascinating. I think that there is a subversive nature to the Bible. That is to say, subversive to pagan civilization around it, which is in pagan civilization you herald the king, you always announce with these kinds of things. So here we're saying, we'll blow the shofar. Notice us, we're here, we're here. We want you to take notice of us. I think there may be other things going on there as well. There may be the a relationship to violence, the slaughter, and to be distracting of that. There may be tons of things that are going on. Of course, we're never going to really know for sure, but these are fascinating. This moment of how to bring sound to the sacred, I think, is a fascinating thing.
So what I would add is that there's a tension between remembering and being remembered. And it's heightened by the invisible God because we cannot know how and when God remembers us. We can only draw our attention to ourselves and hope that we pierce through to God. But the counter to this is that there's a Hasidic word that suggests that all that was spoken at Sinai was the first letter of the Ten Commandments,
Yeah,
which is the silent Aleph.
yeah. Jeremy, you saw a beautiful comment on this, Chatzotzrot from the Magid Mezritcher.
Magid Dober Mezrich makes like there's I think this is John Calvin or something of the Protestant theologians who says there is a God-shaped hole in the human heart.
Mm.
And this is a kind of a Hasidic version of the basic idea that there is a fundamental parallelism between God and humanity. And it's Vasulachim shtei chatzotzrot kesef, and in that Hasidic way of like sort of forced non-grammatical readings or non-semantic readings, you shall make yourselves into shtei chatzitzurot. There are two half forms, kesef meaning kosef, longing. So what you have is you have God, who is a half form and needs the human completion, and humanity that has the God-shaped whole and needs the divine completion,
Nice.
longing for each other. That's like
Very
a
beautiful.
great illustration of Hasidic spirituality, just the deep, here I would say romantic longing of the divine for human and human for divine.
It's all relational, as is the three of us here. The relationship. It's all about relationships. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. And again, thank you to all those who are watching, listening, and taking what we say and weaving it into your own Divrei Torah. We're really, really honored by that. So, and I know that people do that, and they always give us credit. So we thank them for that because, as the Talmud says, if you speak, if you quote someone in their name, you bring a little measure of redemption to the world.
I have
Amen.
I have an Eli Wiesel on that, by the way.
Yeah, I knew.
Um, Eli Wiesel said that the reason, and why should that be true? Um, because if somebody gets feeling proprietary about their insights and they think that people won't share them, that people won't quote them, they won't share them and they will keep the Torah inside because they have possession. If you feel confident that other people will quote in your name, then you will share your Torah expansively because you don't
Nice.
feel like it's diminishing your ownership of your chidush.
That's
So
surprisingly very resilient.
very
We
Wieselian.
appreciate that.
That's a
We
good one.
appreciate everyone. So we want to say, everyone, in this tremulous time, have a wonderful Shabbat. And we hope to see you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Take care.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye bye. Bye bye.